Jacob, to start off, how would someone find meaningful work in their life without going against their values?
I like to kind of say it this way. I've had two themes follow me my entire life, whether I like them to or not. And more often than not, I did not want them to follow me. And that's mental health and robotics. And one very professional, one very personal. The mental health side, it started when I was around the eighth grade, noticed something didn't quite feel right one day. It got worse. And it wasn't until um, I had a family member disappear, and I found out months later that they were in a psychiatric hospital that I started understanding what was actually going on inside of me and what my family history was. And it wouldn't be until senior year of high school, so a whole 4.5 years later, where I actually started getting help for what had developed into very serious issues of anxiety, depression, self harm, and suicidal urges. So personally, what was meaningful for me, this was, as much as I kind of vomit to think about it, 10 years ago when I was in high school, and um, there wasn't like mental health TikTok. There wasn't all of this saying like, if you're a teen, if you're a kid going through this is what it means. This is how you get help. No one really knew about it. So I just very personally, it was meaningful for me to, if I saw my peers or younger students struggling or family members, I just wanted to be there personally for them. And that was very meaningful for me, but I never really saw it as professional because the other side, there was the thing I'd always been pursuing, which was robotics. And honestly, robotics was just meant to be, it just ended up being this thing I kept falling into. Even though I wanted to do other things with my engineering skills, like aerospace engineering and whatnot, I just kept coming back to working on robots. In my freshman year of college, I went off to study engineering. That summer, I got picked up by a military robotics startup to be their lead engineer because they just won this contract with the US Navy. And they looked at me and said, "Here's a bright young kid that we can underpay, overwork, and give him a fancy title, and he won't complain." So I ended up doing that for most of college, thinking, okay, I thought this was also meaningful because I'm big on helping people, saving people's lives was something that sounded like a cool idea to me. And the program name of this contract we won said it was the Advanced Explosives Ordnance, Robotics Ordnance and Disposal Systems, which tells me these are systems that are going to go out in the field, defuse mines, like reconnaissance, make sure that soldiers are safe, and be the thing that blows up instead of a human life. So I thought, hey, we're doing important work here. This is worth going to full time school, doing a full time job 2 states away for a military base that's 2 states in the opposite direction, and using up all of my time and energy to make this to fruition. Um, until I found out what we were actually building wasn't going to be a bomb diffusing robot. It was going to be a bomb. I found that out when the director of the program picked up this thing I'd spent 2 years building, picked up a hand grenade, and said, "When do I get to do this?" and throw it through the window of some. I'm sure he used some slur. Basically, I can't
Mm.
remember the exact one, but um, and that went from this was a meaningful, worthwhile job that I've invested all of my time and energy in into this is the exact opposite of what I want to do with my life and skills. And it was this real, like, soul searching moment. At the same time, that whole, thing of what was meaningful personally to me, of I want to be there for other people, that, hits a hard life challenge when all of your time is sucked up into this, into the engineering world and everything. And that's how I ended up deciding to start my own business, developing technology and specifically robots for mental health support, because I knew what I was doing was wrong, just literally by trial and error, and finding out that this was the wrong thing. I saw this real challenge and this real value in my own life and said, I want to solve this problem and I want to use my skills to do it. And I like to think I found something of meaningful work. I mean, I wouldn't have been continued doing this company for 6 years if I hadn't. So I think is like a bit of advice. It honestly is just like trial and error, and just trusting your gut. Like if you don't feel right doing something, like your body knows more than you would expect it to know. So if your gut tells you like this is not meaningful, this is not right, like get out of there. Whatever else you kind of look at. If you have that gut feeling that this might be better, even if logically you're like, this is gonna be a pay cut to my pay, this is gonna be less flexible hours or whatever. I'd say trust that gut instinct as much as the mental health psychologist in me says don't like use your logic. Like from my life experience, trust that gut instinct.
Hmm. So how is it that they tricked you exactly? I'm trying to figure that out.
So the project was 3 phases, and I was only clued into what phase one would be because I didn't. I was brought on the week they won it, so I wasn't in the application. I basically had no idea what was going on until we were told, "Hey, this is what you have to build for the Navy. Here's the program." And when we did like a press release of this is what we're doing together, and this is the name of the committee and everything, it was okay, I see what we're doing. I've seen what the previous robot we were basically building upon. We were taking this existing device, making it more um, different, making a different version of it. I'd seen what that been used for, and it was a lot of what I thought we were actually doing. It wasn't until we completed the whole first phase of 3 phases that's when it all kind of came out of the woodwork of this is where it's ultimately going. Like the whole purpose of the like reconnaissance and diffusing bombs and whatnot, that's basically just proof of concept to where we really want to go, which is this is a weapon itself.
Hmm. So were you like consulting for the U.S. Navy? Like how did the like U.S. Navy not pick up on the fact that there was some criminal intent behind this project?
Oh well, no, they were. I think that was from my little bio. My boss was kind of separately a criminal
Okay.
individual.
Oh.
The Navy, this was their intention of turning this into a weapon, and it just it's kind of like this weird like flip-flopping chain of command where it's like you have the scientists and engineers at the startup like contractor level who then report to the sketchy we want to build weapons like boss who then reports to this sort of intermediary research lab who have scientists and engineers as their project managers who just care about the tech and doing something impactful who then report to the military program officers who say we just want to build weapons, and then it just keeps going up and up and up the chain of command,
Hmm.
flip-flopping
Okay.
back and forth between the people who are either well-meaning or don't really know what they're doing to the ones who have that very clear, maybe not great intention.
Wow.
Okay. But at the top of the chain of command, so was it the US Navy's intention of having this sort of explosive robot? So they
Yeah,
were
Wow.
they had a whole program, and we were just like one part of it.
uh,
We when we would do releases to the different commands, there would be other devices there, and the whole purpose was kind of interoperability. That yeah, maybe this one can one day be the thing that's just scanning and checking out and making sure it's safe for the soldiers, or like running over the IEDs so someone doesn't step on them, and then the next day you swap out the camera for the explosive and let it roll on
let
into
it go.
the site.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So, how old are you at this point?
19 is
Okay.
I think I was 18 or 19 when I started, and then I left around like 21ish.
Okay. And how did that make you feel? Like, did you feel wronged or duped in any way? Like, it must have had some pretty bad, mental health like effects.
Yeah, I mean, I'd been struggling on my like without this, I'd been struggling for a long time, and once I kind of figured that out, it was like this multi-point um defeat where it almost like it was like a pain that turned into something beautiful almost, if you know what I'm talking about. How on the same day I found out what the actual purpose of the project was. I was basically the last engineer left on our team because it was all college students and even some high school students who were being hired and then left or were gotten rid of just on a whim. um, and I single-handedly had brought this system down to the Navy to demonstrate it, get them trained and everything after we had months of delays and everything. Again, didn't know what we were actually doing here, but I invested everything into it and it was still like failing in front of like the top command. So in the same day I basically failed to finally get this off my plate and successfully deliver. Found out it was being used for something horrible, and then I had to drive 3.5, 4 hours back up to my college, um, only to find out all these people had been messaging me about, they're thinking of killing themselves. They were starting to harm again, and I couldn't get any of these messages because I was on a naval base with no service. So it was like all of these things going wrong at the same time, and I just felt like, desolate and, horrified that I had contributed to something wrong and used my time for that instead of this very important facet of my life or aspect of what was meaningful to me. And it all kind of collapsed to catalyze into like, I need to make a change right now. This is how this idea came of how I could do it. And I just got that idea. My mental health was still terrible. I still felt terrible because couldn't totally cut ties with this company, whether I wanted to or not. That's a recurring theme in my life, I guess, whether I wanted to or not. Um, but it ended up turning into something good, even if I felt terrible the whole time about it.
I see. Okay.
But how so? Like, how were you not able to cut ties with them? That's interesting.
I think part of it is I'm a very dedicated individual. So the fact that we hadn't officially finished the contract and I was the only one who could, um, even though I knew I was doing something wrong, I just couldn't like let it go that way. This was 2 years of my life every single day. I was still stuck in the headset that like I have to finish phase one, which is in my head like at least safe. It's just reconnaissance or it's just proof of concept, and then I can leave. And I know, like knowing what the state of the company, I was like, no one's going to be able to finish and get to phase three if I'm gone. Rest of the Navy, they can do whatever they want, but this part that I have control on, I'm just going to do what I said I'd do, commit to it, and leave. That and my boss wouldn't leave me alone. He would just show up at my college sometimes, even though 3 states away.
Wow.
And I don't want to name drop what the company was, and I don't want to bash my boss too much because we do keep in touch because he's also had kind of like a turnaround in his life and what he's using his technology for. So I don't want to.
Good to hear.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like this is the worst place in the world. Like at the time, to me, it felt like it was. In hindsight, I've seen a lot worse, and I think we're all for the better now.
Wow. Well, I guess that's a testament to your character, right? That you still like stayed and completed the first phase of the project, where even if knew that there were things behind that you couldn't really control.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying it's a testament to my character and not that I can get roped into anything.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you went with good intentions.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I mean. You completed the phase where like that wasn't like the harmful bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from what I can gather from what you're saying is that, sometimes we pursue things in our life thinking, we're meant for this and we're doing the right thing until something in our life and one aspect of our life gets a shorthand. And then we're like, wow, okay, now something else is suffering in my life where it's more important than, what I'm pursuing here, or what I'm doing doesn't really benefit really, or doesn't have that meaning that I was chasing for. So, sadly, sometimes there needs to be certain, like, tragedies or catastrophes that happen that wake us up to better things.